Join us by the fireside for our evening stories of true life's strange encounters with mysterious visitors from worlds and other realities deep within our own universe and beyond. The UFO. This experience happened to me when I was 10 years old. And I was living in Calgary, Alberta, and it was 1970. I was walking home from school that day and I was cutting across the school sports field. Our house wasn't far and we lived across the street from the school. There weren't any other kids around since I had stayed late for a volleyball practice and the rest of the students had gone home maybe about 45 minutes earlier or so when the school let out for the day. So it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. Um, Something then caught my attention from the corner of my eye. So I stopped and I turned to the right to look at it. Suddenly, floating directly above a house facing the schoolyard was a large UFO. I was in the middle of the football field, so this is about 60 to 70 yards distance from where I was standing. This UFO is big and almost touching the roof of the house. It's completely centered on the house, but it is so big, it also is above the house on the left and right. The lots there are about 50 feet wide, which puts the UFO at probably about 150 feet or so across, and perhaps 25 to 30 feet tall. It's very bright, and it gave off a harsh white light, which was difficult to look at and made my eyes hurt. I looked away, back towards my house, and I saw a car and a motorcycle on the side street which intersects the street with the UFO. That street was about half a block away, and I remember being surprised and confused that the drivers are not reacting to the UFO, which clearly must be visible to them. I mean, it's so big and it's so obvious, and since it is so bright, but the traffic was just continuing as normal, as if nothing had happened. Anyway, at this point, I became aware that something was forcing me to turn my head back towards the UFO. So I was turning and my field of view was changing, but I was not the one doing it. I struggled to turn away, but I simply just couldn't control my body. I remembered a feeling of panic, and then the next thing that I can remember, I was walking into my house. It was about 9:30 at night and it was dark outside, and I couldn't recall anything of the last 5 hours. My parents were just furious with me for being so late. Apparently, my parents and my two brothers had been trying to find me for hours. A voice, or maybe a thought in my head, told me to tell them that I'm not feeling well and I need to go to bed. I had no idea where that voice or that thought came from, but I did exactly as it suggested. I ran upstairs to my room and I went to bed. Fortunately, nobody disturbed me. Or maybe unfortunately, I don't know. Anyway, the next day, I still couldn't seem to explain what happened, and my mother was even more angry with me. And since my new school shoes were ruined as well, and the tops of them were all scuffed and dirty, like I was dragged face down across the ground with my feet still dragging on the ground behind me. I don't know. It's just, I don't know how that happened. So I told my older brothers what happened, and they suggested that I keep quiet about it, since nobody would believe me. This was good advice, as it turns out, since in the many years since, most of the people that I have shared this story with don't really know what to say afterwards, and some of them just feel awkward. Many years later, I was looking at my old school workbooks from that time, and they're full of drawings of UFOs, all the same design and with more detail than I can recall from memory. For example, in my memory, I can't remember seeing any windows on that UFO, since the light was too bright to make out any details. But in my drawings, there were large round windows all around the UFO, some with faces looking out. So since then, I wondered about that day and what they were trying to communicate. to me. I mean, I was just a kid. So to this day, I can still see that UFO quite clearly in my mind. And, it was about 150 feet wide. I mean, it just seemed massive. But the amazing thing is that, nobody else was seeing it. So I don't know. And I don't know what they were trying to communicate to me. I haven't seen it since, but, it's just really strange and something that I've always wondered about ever since it happened. Well, the strange thing is that it seems like since nobody else was seeing it, that whatever they were trying to communicate, what they were planning to do, perhaps, was all about you. It was nothing to do with anybody else around on the streets because otherwise they would have seen it. So either your inner vision, your third eye, whatever you want to call it, opened up at that particular time and you just happened to see it, whereas other people didn't because perhaps, their faculties were closed, that sort of um, third eye sight. Or these beings just made themselves on purpose only visible to you for whatever reason, because it did seem like they were kind of calling you to them somehow, forcing you to turn around and look at the UFO, which makes you wonder, what were they trying to do? So pretty fascinating experience. My strange dreams. Something weird started happening at one point in my life. I began waking up all of a sudden around about 2 a.m. on a regular basis and not being able to fall back to sleep until the sun came up. I would wake up and I'd have this urge to turn on every light in the apartment and just stay up, find things to do, and wait until the sun up before going back to bed. I then started to notice that in my dreams there would be random strangers that would show up telling me to wake up. If I tried to ignore them in my dream, they would find ways to harass me and tell me to wake up, telling me it's really important that I woke up. Then there was a really vivid dream. In that dream, I had gotten dressed up and I drove to an upscale hotel. No idea what the context of this dream was. When I got to my hotel room in the dream, someone started knocking on the door, shouting, "Hello, hello," over and over again. Just when I was about to open the door, the phone rang. I answered, and the voice on the phone told me not to open the door. I kept telling whoever was on the phone that I really should see why this person keeps knocking, but the voice kept urging me not to answer the door. So I finally hung up the phone. I headed to the door and opened it and woke up in bed in a cold sweat at 3 a.m. I couldn't go back to sleep. These were the kind of dreams I was having. People trying to get me to wake up constantly. And there'd be these random flashes of bright white light that would light up everything, no matter where I was or what time of day it was in my dream. I remember one dream being outside in the middle of a sunny day and a bright white flash that overpowered the sun just appeared. And usually at this point, some random person in my dream would run up to me and urge me to wake up. Or they would tell me that the flash wasn't part of my dream and I should wake up. Random people in your dream telling you that you're in a dream and that you have to wake up is really creepy. And they were always strangers, no one I knew in real life. A precursor to these dreams was the urge to go to sleep early. I would have these urges to drop everything that I was doing and just go to bed. Sometimes leaving lights on, TV on in the middle of games, middle of eating, etc. I just felt like going, and there was no fighting it. I would just go. So I would put down the controller or put my fork down and I would march right up to my room and I would just lie down. It was this weird kind of almost zombie-like drowsiness. But I would always wake up after 2 a.m. and not be able to go to sleep again until the sun came up. During the time, I took a trip to upstate New York with a friend, and we stayed at the same motel overnight before heading further on our trip. That night, I remember knocking on my door and someone who kept yelling, "Hello, hello," just like in that hotel dream. I remember my friend was fast asleep, unfazed by the knock, but I ended up going to the door and unlocking it. I don't remember anything after that. I woke up sitting on the office chair by the desk around 6 a.m. I checked, but the door was locked and nothing had been taken. It didn't look like anyone had even entered. I woke my friend up and I asked if he'd heard knocking during the night, and he said no. I told him what happened, and he was pretty pissed that I would wake up in the middle of the night to open the door to a stranger anyway. But there was no sign that I did, or that that person had even come in. Just that I somehow ended up on the chair, not on the bed, and I still feel like I was awake when I went to answer the door. It was so clear. The weird thing was that these dreams and these urges to go to sleep wouldn't always happen. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week they would come, but I was starting to fear going to sleep without the lights being on, all the blinds closed, or I'd fight to stay up all night and just go to sleep during the day. After this, I was getting really fed up with how messed up my sleeping schedule had become, and I started to notice that when I'd get the feeling that I should go to sleep, I would take that as a cue to get in my car and just head for the busiest section of the city at night that I could find, somewhere that was filled with people. And I'd notice that the urge to go to sleep would just start to go away instantly. So every time I felt this urge to drop everything and go to sleep, I would fight the urge, I'd drive downtown, and it would stop. The urge would stop. Anytime I felt like I was being watched too, I'd get in my car and I'd go downtown. I'd do exactly the same thing. And this must have worked because after a few weeks of doing this, all these strange urges started to go away. And the dreams, with flashes of white light and people telling me to wake up, all went away. I haven't had a single reoccurrence of these events since, but however, I do notice that I still have a fear of going to sleep until the sun comes up. And I'm always fighting that. I also recently noticed that pictures of the typical gray alien stereotype now scare the crap out of me, and I hate looking at them. Even seeing the cartoon ones in South Park, I get this kind of mini panic attacks. And those pictures had never even bothered me before. I never even thought about these things before. And now I get these waves of panic whenever I see them. I still have no explanation for the missing time up north, the weird dreams, or that one night at the motel in upstate New York, which I don't think was a dream, it felt very real and felt more like another missing time event. Most people I've told don't know what to make of it. And my current girlfriend has also noticed that I obsess with making sure all the blinds are closed with no open little slivers of light or anything, no matter where I sleep. I told this story to someone at a party once, and the guy came out and told me his abduction story, and he was pretty positive that I had been getting abducted during that year, and that they'd either gotten bored of me or I had become a hassle with constantly trying to drive to places full of people to avoid the happenings. Other friends either offered no explanation or they believed that some sort of abduction scenario was taking place. Who knows? I have no memory of physically being abducted, but those weird things of being watched, being urged to go to sleep, feeling violated when waking up, those were real and they still bother me. Just on the side note, last year I fell asleep on my girlfriend's bed while she was staying up watching Netflix in the living room. I had left the lights on, and at some point in the night, she came to turn the lights off, and she says that I woke up screaming and yelling, "Get the hell off me! Leave me alone! Help! Don't touch me!" etc. She said it was the scariest, most blood-curdling thing she'd ever heard, and that literally seconds later I had passed back out and was asleep again, and she couldn't get me to wake up. That was so creepy. So anyway, I live with this, whatever this trauma, this thing was that was done to me, I live with it. And doubtless, it will haunt me for the rest of my life because I don't think I'll ever forget it. You know, it does kind of sound like your friend is probably right, and you were abducted by something, whether they're actual aliens, physically, with physical bodies or whatever, or beings from another dimension, who are messing with you, maybe experimenting on you, maybe, I don't know, draining you of your energy, taking something from you, from your body, um, from your energy field. It's kind of hard to say, but it definitely sounds like something along those lines was done to you. And anyway, best of luck. And the good thing is that you came up with a very creative way of escaping escaping these assaults every night by just going off into town and being around people, and that makes a lot of sense. And it also sounds to me like there were guardian angels, perhaps, who were trying to help you, and you were seeing them through your dreams, and they were telling you to wake up, so that to avoid these attacks, perhaps. Anyway, really, really interesting experience.